Okay, this tutorial is going to be the first in a series of tutorials where we're going to be looking at each of the audio effects in Ableton Live and having a look at what the parameters do and how you can use it in your tracks, as well as looking at tips and tricks and things like that. So we'll be kicking off by looking at the auto filter device, and the track that we're going to be using that on is this one. So to start with, I'm just going to briefly mention the section in the center here. So this is standard to all filters, so I don't want to cover that in this tutorial. If you're not familiar with it, a little tip is to get yourself some white noise, or grab a sample from somewhere, and make sure it hasn't already been filtered. And you put a spectrum after your auto filter, and when you hit play, you'll see that it's taking up all of the frequencies, and then you can have a little bit of a mess around with this area in the center here with your cutoff resonance and the different types of filter, and it's very easy to hear and see exactly what the filter is doing. So we won't be looking at that now, but it's just a nice tip if you're not sure how filters work. So I've also got some white noise here to make it easy to listen to the changes that we'll be making throughout this track. And the first thing we're going to look at is this Quantize beat section at the bottom. So I've got some fairly standard automation going on the white noise at the moment. We've got two filters. We've got one which is slowly allowing the upper frequencies in, and that's being followed a little bit of a lag by the second filter, which is taking the lower frequencies out. So it's a little bit like having a wide band pass. And that sounds like this. And it goes back down the other side. So it's fairly standard stuff. Now, the Quantize beat section actually updates the cutoff in increments. So rather than it being a very, very smooth sweep or very smooth movement of any description, it's actually going to update where the cutoff point is, and it's going to do that in increments of 1/16 of a bar, which we've got a whole range down here going right up to the full bar. So if we just apply this, and I'll go for 4/16, so once every beat, and that's the resolution that we'll set in here. In fact, it's already set, so it'll be nice and easy to see and hear this in action. So you can hear this, the stepping going on. So smooth, and then updating every beat. And obviously, the smaller the increments, the faster the change is going to be. And it's important to realize that this is applied to the cutoff no matter what kind of modulation you're using. So whether you're using automation here, or whether you're using the LFO or the envelope setting, the Quantize beat will apply to all of these. So what we'll do is just quickly add this to our white noise to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm going to go for just 1/16, and we'll automate the Quantize on and have it so that it's happening just for the downward sweep, but not for the sweep that's going up. And you'll get this kind of little, it's subtle, but it's still, everything adds up, and it's a nice little touch. So it's a handy feature to have. Now, the next section is the LFO section. And let's just go back into the white noise. So with the LFO section, again, standard LFO parameters to start with. Essentially, the LFO is only modulating the cutoff, so it's sweeping it up and down around the cutoff point that you have set. And the higher the amount, the greater the distance the sweep will be. And the rate obviously affects how quickly those sweeps are occurring. And you have a whole bunch of different shapes that you can use for the LFO. Now there's also the standard sync to the tempo of the track in various different increments, and also what is often called a freestanding LFO where it's set in hertz. So just to have a quick listen to this working. I'm just going to take the quantize off of this one as well. It's going to make it a little bit easier to hear what's going on with the various sweeps. So this is fairly standard, but what you've actually got is two LFOs happening here. One's coming out of the left speaker, one the right, providing there are no other stereo treatments that you've got going on. So I'll simplify it and just say one is for the left channel and one is for the right channel. Now, there's a phase parameter here, and this will push the LFO in the right channel out of sync with the one in the left. And if I just create a visual representation of this for you, purely from a graphical perspective, this is not what's going on in analog, but you can see if we imagine this is the left channel and this is the right channel, as we turn the phase parameter up, it's going to be doing something like this. So when we get to 180 degrees, they're perfectly out of sync. And in this case, you will hear the a bright signal in one of the speakers whilst you're hearing it, or should I say one of the channels, and a dull signal in the other, and they'll be sweeping alternatively. So let's dive into this, and if I put this on 180, so it's exactly the same as the visual representation, and I'll make this a little bit slower so it's easier to hear. So you can hear what's happening there. Now the offset, this is changing the start point now, just as we were with the right channel. This will be doing it for the left channel, but it does keep the phase relationship exactly the same that you've set with this parameter. So you can get some really nice stereo effects with this, and add a lot more movement to any of your tracks, and particularly things like these sweeps and builds. Now there's also, under the freestanding LFO, there's also a spin control, and this changes the rates of the two LFOs as well. So it's just another way of adding stereo width and adding extra movement. Now let's also throw one of these LFOs onto the track, and I think we'll have this fixed to rate. We'll keep them out of phase so we get that stereo vibe. And I'm going to go for something a little bit different. We'll go for 3/16, see how this sounds. It's going to be a little bit too much to have it going the whole time. So again, we'll add some modulation here. And I don't want this to be going too high. But let's have this creeping up at the same time as we've got these filters opening up. And you can hear, actually, because it goes into the quantized beat, you can hear a change here as it goes from this smooth LFO into something a little bit more stuttery. As it is, I think what we'll do is take the LFO off in this section and just keep these two completely separate, so it gives a nice contrast. Now, the third area is the envelope section. And I will just quickly dive down here to a drum loop that I've dropped in just to demonstrate this working. So essentially what's happening with the envelope section is the cutoff is moving in relation to the volume of the signal that enters the filter. So in this case, it's going to be a drum loop, and the higher the volume, the more the cutoff will move. So with positive envelope values set up down here, it will, as higher volume comes in, it will open the filter, it will increase the cutoff. And with negative values, the volume that's coming in will decrease the cutoff. You've also got attack and a release, which can be thought of really as the response time of the filter. So the attack is how quickly the filter responds to increases in volume, and the release is how quickly the filter responds to decreases in volume. When they're both set very low, it will follow the incoming volume of the audio signal very, very closely and very tightly. And when you've got these increased, it will have a much more loose kind of a feel to it. It'll be a much smoother modulation. So in this case, we've got a drum loop. Let's just have a quick listen to this with the auto filter off. And I'm going to apply the filter, but without the envelope. And I'm also going to take this Quantize beat off. Actually, that would just confuse things. So you can hear it gets very dull. Now, what we'd expect if we turn this envelope control up is that the cutoff will move up, and it will move up more when it's receiving these louder signals than when it's receiving the quieter signals. So we'd expect these loud kick drums to have their top end fairly intact as the cutoff is opening and letting all of the frequencies through. But the things like the shakers and the lower percussion, they're going to sound a lot duller. In fact, the shakers might disappear completely. So let's check this out. And if we play with the release, for example, we can get it so that we can actually have the cutoff sweeping back down a little bit more slowly than this than the kick is actually dropping off, and so you'll hear it slicing into some of the shaker sound. It becomes a much more kind of noticeable filter movement. And if we put the cue up a little bit here. So you can hear there's some interesting effects that can be had from that. We're actually going to look at using this in the track, but we won't be using the audio from the white noise. Instead, what we're going to do is introduce some audio via the sidechain option. So this applies only to the envelope, but rather than have the track that the filter is on, we can choose to have the input of the volume of a piece of audio from any of the other tracks. So I've got a silent track set up at the top here. And that just means that I've got it muted, so it's not actually going to play the audio that's on there, but we're just going to be using it to drive the filter and get some effects. So let's grab a loop. I want something fairly swift, like this one that's got quite a rapid beat and groove to it, because we want it to chop into this white noise. So we activate the sidechain, select the silent percussion, because that's where I want to take my audio from. And then let's have a look where we are with the filter. Let's have this going downwards. So every time there's a volume input, it's going to bring the cutoff down. And I'm going to have it follow it very, very closely. Let's turn this up a little. Try it the other way around. And I think we'll take this Quantize beat off for now to hear what it sounds like. Yeah, that's a bit more interesting. So let's remove this completely and have a listen to this in context with the track. We've got this silent percussion here that's driving something else in the track as well. So easy way to deal with that is that we'll just create the modulation only in this breakdown section. And I think that probably that is going to sound better if we have it operating down here somewhere. And it's still a little bit too random for me as well. So I'm just going to dive in. And now, of course, you can edit this to your heart's content and have the audio doing whatever you want it to do to drive your filter. Have something a little bit more repetitive. Much better, much more interesting. It works far better with a track. Okay, so that's the auto filter, all of the different parameters and what they do, and some ideas of how to use them. Obviously, I've used it on the white noise just because it stands out so much more, but you can use it on a whole different bunch of things and get some really cool results from the very subtle to the really crazy. Well, as always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do head over to the website to subscribe if you want to be updated on new videos. And there's also some free racks and different things that you can download from the site as well. All the best. Take care.